Hey there, scary story fanatics! Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Ever experienced the horrors of love, broken heart, sleepless nights, homicide? Well, 2 out of 3 is still good enough. So if you're curious about the evil brought about by adoration, settle in close to your monitors and lock your doors for Marc Selby's Molly.
Molly never liked me, but I really didn't care. She was Jessie's, my girlfriend, best friend from high school, and college roommate. I met Jessie and Molly at college myself, and from day one, I could feel her eyes like steel daggers, piercing me with quiet animosity any time I was around. I knew why, of course. Everyone but Jessie, it seemed, knew. Molly had a thing for Jessie. This love she held for Jessie persisted another 4 years, up until a week ago, when Molly went missing. It was nearing the end of summer, and Jessie wanted to go camping. I couldn't go for once, due to work, and I told her she should go with Molly and some of their friends. It wasn't like the weekend away was going to be the end of the world or anything. Molly, upon finding out later that afternoon that I could not attend, had become ecstatic. It was truly mind-boggling how much hate and contempt she felt towards me still. But, for all of it, I held twice the amount of pity for her. Jessie had no interest. She never had, always thinking the two were simply BFFs. They left Friday afternoon and returned Sunday night. Jessie dropped off Molly and went home to her apartment. The next day, she got a call from Molly's work saying she hadn't been in. Apparently, Molly had used Jessie's phone number as a backup. When Jessie drove by Molly's place, she found her camping gear was still at the front door. She knocked, but there had been no answer. After a call to Molly's parents, no luck on Molly's phone, and no sightings of her at her usual hangouts, her parents filed a missing persons report. I noticed Jessie's demeanor changed then. I understood she was stressed due to her best friend's disappearance, but it was more than that. She became snappy, easy to bring to tears, sometimes just at the call of her name. For the last week, we hadn't seen much of each other, as she had asked for some space while she worked through her stress and worry. Today, however, she was supposed to go into the police station and do some sort of interview, to tell her account of what happened the last night she saw Molly and the like. I knew this would be emotionally draining for her, so I decided to get her favorite cup of coffee from her favorite coffee stand and surprise her outside the police station when she got out. I saw her long before she saw me as I walked up the sidewalk. She stepped out the doors and stopped, letting the flat of her hands rest on the doors as they shut behind her a moment, as she closed her eyes and took a deep, calming breath. She nearly shrieked when she opened her eyes and saw me standing there smiling. She definitely jumped, hitting her head on the glass behind her slightly. "Oh, sorry," I said with a wince. "I thought you might want coffee." Yeah," she said as she rubbed the back of her head before grabbing the coffee I was now offering to her. "Sorry, you surprised me." "Sorry about that again. How'd it go in there?" I asked, motioning for her to follow me to where I was parked. She sighed as she followed me, sipping her coffee and making a face with a taste. "Still no leads. I don't think I'm a suspect anymore, at least." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Well, that's a relief. Is there something wrong with the coffee?" She shook her head. An awkward silence ensued for about 30 seconds before she broke it. "Hey, do you mind if we go for a drive?" she asked suddenly. "Sure," I said enthusiastically. "Where to?" To the park on the outside of town that leads to the woods. There's a place in the woods where Molly and I would go," she said somberly. "Do you think she's there?" I asked, a little hopeful and a little confused. "No," she said, sounding a little grumpy at the very thought. Her voice softened as she continued. "No, sorry. No, I already checked a few times. Molly's not there." "Okay," I said simply, trying not to be offended with how short she was being with me. I knew she was trying to deal with her best friend's disappearance. So, we drove in silence, letting the radio play as we drove, letting Jessie and Molly's favorite station drone out. It only took us about 10 minutes to get there. Benefits of living in a smaller town, and we silently got out of the car, and I let Jessie lead the way. The little wooded area she brought me to was pretty secluded, about a 10-minute walk from the park boundary, covered in bushes and brambles, making it hard to traverse at times, and kept their little clearing pretty private. It seemed like a place some young boys might find and turn into a base. The clearing itself was very small, enough bare earth to lay outstretched in. The rest of the clearing is covered in small bushes. A fallen log lay covered in moss and other plant growth on the far side. Behind that, before the clearing's boundary of brambles, was a tall cross sticking from the ground. "That's," I started to say, pointing to the cross, and what I realized was pretty freshly raised dirt in front of it. "Don't worry about that," Jessie said, exasperated from behind me, giving me a small push on my back. I turned on her, a little freaked out about the whole thing. "Why is there a fresh—" I gasped. Then, Jessie was no longer standing behind me, but instead, it was Molly. This startled me enough to leap back, clipping my ankles on some of the undergrowth and falling back into the clearing. Molly stepped in after me, smiling at me as if I was some pathetic thing before her. "What's wrong?" asked Molly, with Jessie's sweet, caring voice before it turned back into Molly's familiar, condescending tone. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "What the fuck?" I asked, incredulously, jumping to my feet before moving back to the outer edge of the clearing. "Where's Jessie?" is all I could think to ask. Molly frowns at this. Tears well up in her eyes as she looks to the grave beside me. "She never came back from camp," Molly admitted. I became angry then. I balled up my fist and pressed them against my head. Was she telling me that Jessie was gone? I looked back to the grave then, and to Molly, who was staring at me, face devoid of emotion. "Who's in there then?" I demanded, before a thought crossed my mind, thinking about how Molly had changed from Jessie. "Is it Molly? Who are you?" Surely this was some person or monster, something. This was not Jessie, and surely it was not Molly. "A dog. Someone buried a dog a long time ago here," whatever was wearing Molly's skin said. "I'd always wondered. It was here when Jessie and I found this place, but Jessie never wanted me to check. As for who I am..." She paused for a moment and stared at me. Her form seemed to shimmer, clothes changed to the ones Jessie had been in. Skin's pigment lightening, her face changing, hair turning red from black. Now standing before me is Jessie. She steps forward, then her visage shimmers again, and suddenly I'm looking at myself, as if looking in a mirror. "What the fuck?" I say simply, not sure what else to say. "What the fuck?" the thing wearing my skin repeated. The pitch was off. The thing that was pretending to be me frowned and repeated the sentence a few more times until it matched my voice. It laughed then as it looked up at my horrified expression. "You should really see your face," it said before mimicking the look perfectly. My mind was racing now. I had a million questions, accusations. The emotions stirring within me screamed at me to lash out. Finally, A second or two later, but what felt like hours, I asked simply, "What did you do to Jessie?" The thing masquerading as me stopped laughing abruptly, the face, my face, staring back at me becoming blank. It took a step back, the visage changing, with the movement back into Molly. "I told her the truth," Molly began. Her eyes welled up with tears then. "We were drinking, having a good time. Everyone else had gone to bed. I told her, finally, how I felt about her. I told her we could run away together." She stopped, smiling then. "And she told me she knew. That she had always known, but that she just didn't know. We were so close, and she didn't want to lose what we already had. It was refreshing, to be honest." She looked up at me, and her expression darkened. Then, predictably, she brought you up. She just couldn't leave you. She really cared about you. I suggested posing as you in another town, in another state. Yet smart, wonderful Jessie knew that that was a bad idea. The second someone saw her and saw me as you, my secret would be in jeopardy. She knew? About you and what you are? I asked, a little surprised at this revelation. Jessie was a genius, you idiot. You really didn't know anything about her. That doesn't matter. Not anymore. I continued to try and convince her to come with me, and she refused. I made a desperate plea and then tried to kiss her. Molly pauses then, choking back a sob as tears begin to flow. She laughed and pushed me away. I didn't know what to do. I was embarrassed. I was devastated. I was angry. I slapped her. I'm very strong, and the alcohol had made me misjudge my own strength. I snapped her neck. That was what I was waiting for. I didn't care what kind of monster was before me. She murdered my girlfriend, deceived me as that dead girlfriend, and was most likely going to kill me as well. Well, I wouldn't have it. I charged forward with an angry yell, moving to tackle her with the intent to pin and pummel her. She stood her ground, grinning, reaching out at the last minute, her right hand stretching out, grabbing my throat and stopping me dead in my tracks, lifting me off my feet. She laughed at me a moment, before trailing off into a sigh as I struggled, grabbing at her wrist, trying desperately to free myself. I'm moving on, she said then, her tone serious. They'll probably find you, and Jessie not long after, but never me. She smiled sweetly at me. I only told you everything because I thought Jessie would have liked you to know what happened to her. Like how I'm caring to kill you so quickly out of respect to her. My eyes widened as she lifted me higher. I began aiming kicks at her face, but each strike, she just smiled wider, her face never moving from the impact of my blows, her smile never faltering. I tried to call out one last time, this time for help, but the moment sound began to utter from my lips, I heard a crack. My vision went black, and all I could hear was the maddening laughter of Molly slowly fading away.
That's the thing about love. It will always turn on you when you least expect it. Murder and mayhem are surely the way to go. But if you go, remember to come back again next weekend for one killer story. And until then, remember to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.